Okay, well, we're live, guys. Hello, hello, hello. It's Lisa Copeland, Glenn Lundy, and Kerri Wise. And we want to invite you into our living room to have a conversation. Hello. Hello, my friends.
Hi.
Hi, Lisa.
How are you?
Fabulous.
Good. So I don't know who wants to kick this off, but we kind of made the decision that it's time to have some conversations. And we've all had separate conversations, and there's a lot of people out there having conversations right now about the events in the world. And boy, there's a lot of them going on. And so I think I want to kick right in. Everyone's jumping on, boy. I'll tell you what. So if you guys have not, guys and gals out there have not shared this out, share it out. This is an important conversation for what's going on in the world today. And in full disclosure, we're all three friends, and we've all three had we have such a great dialogue between us, and we want to share that conversation with all of you. And so I think I'm going to start it with, I've really struggled the last 4 or 5 days on what to say and how to say it. And share it out. This is an important conversation. Okay, why are we getting feedback here, Lundy? Is that you?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay. And
I was trying to share it out like you asked us to.
I know. See, that's it. You're listening.
Now I'm afraid to share.
Yeah, no, share it out. Just turn your phone down.
Yeah.
I have really been concerned about how to say how I feel, so that I know that the tonality is correct, so that I don't look like, I don't know. I mean, it's been a conversation. Kerri, I've talked to you about it. Glenn, I've talked to you. I've talked to other friends about it. And so my first step was I shared a couple of posts from some very good friends of mine. One of them being you, Glenn Lundy, and another one of my friends being Yolanda Conyers, who's the head of D&I, which is diversity and inclusion of Lenovo Computers. Her and I've been friends for 20 years. And that was like my toe into the water. And so, I want to talk about that. Kerri, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll go over to Glenn. What has been your feeling the last 5 or 6 days on the Facebook posts that you've seen?
Oh, where do I start? Well, I should start. I should start with my Facebook post and what I posted about it. And I always go back to Martin Luther King quotes. I always feel like it's a good place to start when it comes to racial injustice, civil rights. And what I posted was that, what we will remember is not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends.
And Kerri, can I just tell you, that to me was so poignant. And that was one of the things that made me put my toe in the water. And it's not because I didn't want to, but it was because, man, this is a tough one.
Yeah. And I understand why people are hesitant, because you don't want to step in it. You don't want to say the wrong thing. And I don't expect people to care about every issue either. Right. Like, I'll be honest, when it comes to dogs and pets, like I'm not a huge pet person. So you're probably not going to see me speaking out on that as much as other topics. So like, we all have our hot buttons, but I do think that it was very meaningful for me to have friends who either responded to that post. So maybe they didn't put their own post, but they responded to a post that I made, showing some support. Or, I had really bold friends that just came out and said, look, I am against racial injustice. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not going to stand for that. Right. Like, and so I think it's important, at a minimum, we can all show some level of empathy and not think of it as I'm on this side or that side. No matter what happens, you can always show empathy. And that goes a long, long way in my boat.
But Kerri, we're going to come back to that empathy.
Yeah.
Because there's, some of it's not, it's still not okay. Glenn,
right.
How have you felt about what you've seen put out there? You're such an eloquent communicator, Glenn Lundy, the host of the #1 morning show, hashtag Rise and Grind. You're the most eloquent communicator that I know.
You are.
And, you're so heartfelt. But real deal here, like, we're live. Talk to us. How have you felt?
So now that you said that, I'm going to be like, yeah. I have felt multiple emotions, and it's I live in a bubble, Lisa. I live in a bubble, man. I've got a beautiful home. I've got 10 acres of land. We're separated from the city. We've got a pond. We go fishing. I get to work with dealers. I get to travel around the country. Like, I live in this
But
very
Glenn, it hasn't always been that way.
I know, but I live in this safe place. But I almost, and that's I guess what I'm getting to is when I see injustice and I see the things that are going on, and I know how badly people hurt, I feel that. I feel their hurt, right? And I feel it on both sides because God has given me a very unique situation where I've grown up in different cultures, and I've been everything from jailbird to homeless to drugs to growing up with an all-white household, growing up with an all-black household, small towns, big towns, big cities, little cities. Like, I've been through the gambit, and so my heart just hurts on all sides, and I hate that people feel like there has to be one right answer, and that there's right and that there's wrong. And I wish people could see, once you walk in other people's shoes, then you start to be able to see that I can be right with my perspective based on my experiences, and you can be right with your perspective based on your experiences. And we can find beauty by blending your experiences and my experiences. That's how we can communicate and connect. And so when I see everyone doing the exact opposite right now, right? Everyone's going to one side or the other. It's like there's a line and they have to choose, and people are being forced to choose. And that's what hurts me, and that's what scares me as far as the future of our country and the future of humanity, is when everyone feels like they have to pick a side. So that's kind of where I've been at for a little while. I'm really thankful for where I am, but at the same time, I really hurt for those that are struggling right now.
Well, and I, if I could just add, I mean, I jumped straight to kind of empathy, but I think, you asked me how I was feeling this week, and
yeah,
I was very frustrated, angry, just, in some ways kind of hopeless. I don't know if that's the right word, but to me, it wasn't just what happened to George Floyd. The Ahmaud Arbery got me going, right? Only a week or two before that. The situation in Central Park. But I think what's important is that for those of you who these situations, this was the first time it got on your radar, or maybe you were just shocked and appalled. For me, I wasn't shocked and appalled. Like, I've talked about these things for many years, right? Different situations. The Trayvon Martin got me going, right? Years ago. And so I think it just depends on your perspective, but being African-American, these aren't just news stories. I know of people who have experienced situations. And so I'm coming from a personal place. And I think what's hard is when you speak out on these things, which, I'm taking a huge risk on speaking out on these things. I live in two worlds. I live in a Black world, and I live in a corporate white world. I live in a neighborhood that's mostly white. And so it's very hard to speak out on these things and not come off as, militant or, that you're just complaining or using the race card. But
So, Kerri, I want to stop you on that word.
Yeah.
Here. Militant. Okay. You are standing up for human rights.
Yes.
Standing up for life. You're standing up for people. Why is that considered militant? Like, tell me how you feel about that. Because, you and I talked earlier today, and that's what you said. And it really hit me. And I'm like, she's not militant. She's just.
No, I'm not militant at all.
Anymore. Like, I'm afraid.
I think my voice, I think one of the differences in, I'm going to say being a minority, maybe it's being African-American, maybe it's being a woman, is that sometimes when I speak, I could be representing my entire race. right? To somebody who maybe has no experience with that race. They don't have a great friend.
You're in business. For those of you who don't know you,
Right.
you're in the automotive industry and you hold a very high position in a corporate job. So you are looked at as a leader, as a woman, as an African-American woman, as, you know, somebody, you have a big presence, let's be real. And you have a lot of influence and a lot of outreach.
Yeah. And so when I speak, I'm speaking from Kerri Wise's, all right, this is my opinion, but there's the added pressure of kind of representing your race or representing your gender, in some cases, working in a male-dominated industry. So I think, and then there's the stereotypes that come along with who I am, right? We've all heard of the angry Black woman stereotype, which is, you know,
I've been an angry white woman many times.
And so
I am meaner than Kerri Wise, I promise you.
You're walking that line of like not wanting to play into stereotypes, but also keep it real and be who you are. Because sometimes you are angry. There's moments you are angry. And so, you know, I think there's always two sides of the story, but sometimes there's wrong and right. Sure. And in this instant, I spoke out. I don't speak out on everything, right? I'm not, you guys speak out on a lot more than me, but there's times where I need to make my voice very clear and forget, you know, any pressures of the career or my neighborhood or anybody else, and just kind of make it clear. Someone has to speak up. And I need to use my voice. And I know a lot of people that have suffered when it comes to racial injustice and have not been heard. And I need to make sure they're heard.
And I will tell you, Kerri, what you said, and I wrote it down because it was so strong to me. And you and a couple of my other friends said it. And it was the silence. I almost cried. Like, it was the silence of our friends.
Yeah.
And that's when I said, I can't be silent anymore out of fear that I could say the wrong thing or offend somebody. Because it's not that I don't think it's not right. It's like I was afraid to put my toe in the conversation, as I would come off as, well, what would you know about this, Lisa Copeland? You're a white girl in Austin, Texas, privilege or whatever, right?
Right.
But when you said that, Kerri, and you and I've had a few talks over the week, and it's the silence of our friends. And that's what I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be silent anymore, but I'm going to be real careful how I enter this conversation, because I need it to be impactful, because people look to me as a leader, just as they look to the two of you as leaders. So the conversation's got to be right. And so I really had to get in the right place to have it and to start it. And I think that's important in times like this, and not to be emotional and not to jump in and comment on everything we see, because let's face it, guys, there's a lot of propaganda out there on both sides that I don't think is real. I'm not saying it's not real. Oh God. What I'm saying is that I think that people are blowing things up, that they're whatever side of that you sit on this, you're making this side look worse than this side. What is real is that there's racial injustice and racism alive and well in this country. That's what's real. But I don't believe that the 95% of the people that are protesting, they're not the looters. They're not the ones out burning down the church. They're not there. Those aren't those people. Those are the people that come into every one of these situations. They take advantage, and they come in and they are trying to get their message across, right? It has nothing to do with the 95% of the people that, if my friends called me today, I would be down there marching with them, saying we're not going to take this anymore. And me and my friends would not be the ones looting and burning down the buildings.
Yeah.
Right. So what do you say about that?
I think that, you touched on something as far as speaking as a friend. I think that what a lot of people don't understand, and I even have to wrap my own head around this, because, I'm the rising ground guy. I'm motivation, education, inspiration. That's what I do. That's my brand, and that's who I am. And when it comes to a lot of things, political or dividing or so on and so forth, I will stay away from a lot of that stuff. Lisa used to get on me all the time for not watching the news, because I used to refuse to I'm like, I don't care what's going on in the world. I just got to take care of this. But what I've learned and understood is as a leader, we have to be abreast and aware of what's going on. And when there is a civil injustice, this really has nothing to do with black or white. What this has to do with is people's liberties have been stripped from them for hundreds of years, right?
And Glenn, it does have to do with black and white. I'm going to disagree with you.
It's really about injustice. It's about civil liberties. I will stand up for anyone whose civil liberties are being stripped from them. In this particular case, it happens to be a black man. It happens to be police brutality. Those happen to be the events of civil liberties being stripped away from people. And so that's where I feel like when you say nothing, that says something, right? Mm-hmm. By saying nothing, you're saying something. And I am not okay with human beings not being treated as human beings, period. Whether they're black, whether they're white, whether they're Asian, whether they're Hispanic, no matter whether it's a woman versus a man, when people are not being treated like humans, that's when I feel like we have to, I have to say something. And so I just want to kind of hit on that point. You mentioned it earlier, as a friend, you just felt like you don't want to dip your toe in the water. And I just want to challenge you, like, please understand, if you say nothing, you are saying something.
No, like I said, it was Kerri Wise's post where it said, it ended it with the silence of our friends.
Yes.
And it was like, man, but your friend doesn't want to be offensive. Your friend wants to support you. I'll pick up the phone and call both of you. But as a leader, it's like, okay, I can't just, what I can't do is just support my private tribe of dear friends, you and, whatever. Like, I have to make a stand on this. But the stand is, and it'll never be for me, I just like with what's going on with the rioting and the looting, my feel is 99% of people that serve, that are police officers, are wonderful people. You got the bad apples in those, but I do think we got to get rid of the bad apples as soon as they become bad apples. And I think that, I don't know. I think it's really tough because, I'm seeing all these posts on Facebook. People are like, oh, look at them. They're out looting. They're burning down the church across from the White House, and I'd like you guys to speak to that. I mean, I think I would have spoke to it differently 5 years ago, but I can tell you now, I feel like, number one, it's probably not 90% or 95% of the ones who just want to come out and peacefully protest. I think that there's a lot of, stuff behind it that has nothing to do with that. And so they're politicizing a message that should not be politicized, but that's the world we live in today. But then again, Kerri and I talked about this earlier today. At some point, taking a knee doesn't work. And Kobe Bryant wearing a Black Lives Matters jersey, it doesn't work. So at what point do people just, that's the way America was founded. And again, I'm not talking about robbing and looting. Okay. There's a big difference. So I want to be clear on that. But at what point do you throw your tea in the harbor and go, we're not going to do this anymore? Like, we are serious. Take us seriously. We can't live like this anymore. We can't live in fear. We can't, because all I know is if it was my son, I texted my daughter the other night. I said, I'd have done a hell of a lot more than burn down a building. I can tell you that.
I think, first of all, let me just be very clear that rioting, violence, looting, bad, right? Yeah. I totally disagree with that. So let's make that very clear. But I found it challenging when people were more appalled by the looting than they were about injustice. And I found that offensive in some cases, that they came out, several posts about the looting, no post, no mention about the actual civil injustice. In that case, it's like, well, let's just wait for the courts to do their thing. Let's wait till all the evidence comes out, right?
The evidence has been out.
Trust me, I've seen someone say that.
The jury of America says the 3 that sat and watched it should be in jail right now. Unbelievable. I want to give you guys a comment. Demetrius Naylor, who's a friend of ours, he says, this is a group of people, a specific demographic who are blatantly being oppressed and discriminated against. Let's call a spade a spade.
I would handle it differently. And so let me not talk about people who are looting and right. Violence, right? But let's just say someone who's protesting, who's angry, who might be yelling, who might be having sit-ins. I try to put myself in their shoes. It's easy for me, the girl that's living in her little suburban bubble right now, to say how I would handle my anger. You know what I would do? I would go to the spa. I might meditate, do some yoga, pray. I'm not in the inner city. I'm not struggling every day.
Right.
I'm not a Black man being pulled over by the cops just because he's driving.
Right.
My car hasn't been searched illegally. Like, I haven't gone through that. I haven't gone through that struggle. And I'm not saying that's a reason for them to act in that way, but it's easy for you to react.
Are you afraid for your husband to go through that?
Oh, 100%. I mean, my husband has matched the description of a criminal several times, right? The vague description. It's like 6'1", Black man, white shirt, jeans. Yeah. You know? I'm like, oh God, you can't go out today, right?
Yeah.
And you too, Glenn?
Right? I mean, Glenn, you must have matched the description.
I have. Actually, the first experience I ever had with police officers was my dad got pulled over at gunpoint, surrounded by police, because he matched the description of someone who had stole a vehicle in like a neighborhood over, even though the license plate on my dad's car was different than the license plate that they were looking for on the stolen vehicle. So that was my very first experience with police officers, was guns pointed at my dad's head. It's crazy, man.
No, and it changes things. I remember, Lisa, I remember I sent you a video just to kind of like give you an idea of what it was like, because there was a white woman and she was with her grandson. She was white, her grandson was biracial, and she was driving with him, and a neighbor called the police and thought that the grandson was robbing the lady. It was her grandson. And so the police got called. They get pulled over. The grandson gets taken out by gunpoint and gets put in the back of the car. And the grandma has to kind of tell the police officer, no, this is my grandson. And I sent that to Lisa. Yeah, I sent that to her on purpose. Yeah. Because I figured
I would officially be that mad white woman if that happened.
Right, to your grandsons, right? Yeah. And I think when that kind of stuff happens to you, it's hard to erase that experience for that grandson. It's really hard to erase that experience, that someone you trusted, an organization you trusted, could turn against you, I guess, or your neighbors could turn against you. So I'm not giving an excuse to anger and bad behavior, but I certainly have an empathy. And instead of focusing on the outcome, we should be focusing on the root. And I feel like we're focusing more on the anger than we are the root. And the root of it, in my opinion, to people being really angry is not being heard, not being believed. When there's not video involved, there's certainly really challenging. And in most cases, there's not video involved.
Yeah. So Glenn, you made an important visit the other day. I think it was just your way of just working through it. Tell everybody about what you decided to do when you went and took lunch.
Say that again.
You went and took lunch a few days ago to the police.
Oh yeah, I did. So right after the George Floyd thing, right after that happened, I was pissed. I was really angry. I've experienced some crazy. I've experienced a lot of things. The first time my wife and we traveled with the family, it's me, my wife, my mother-in-law, and all of my children driving to North Carolina.
And for y'all who don't know, we're talking all of his children. There's about 15 of them.
All 57 of them.
Limo.
We're traveling to North Carolina. As soon as I pass into North Carolina, we get pulled over for speeding. I definitely 100% was speeding. And the officer comes up and he asks me to step out of the vehicle. He takes me back to his vehicle. He searches me. He puts me in the back of his car. He does all of these things. He runs me, so on and so forth. We sit out there for, 40 minutes, so on and so forth. Then he says, okay, you're clean. Don't be speeding. He gives me a ticket. He gets me back in the car.
So back up, he searches you?
Oh, yeah. So when I sit back in the car, my wife goes, what the heck was that all about? And I was like, what? He wanted to make sure I was good, didn't have any warrants. And my wife's like, why did he make you get out of the car? And I said, they always make me get out of the car. They don't make you get out of the car? My wife's like, hell no, they don't make me get out of the car. I didn't even know.
I don't even get a ticket when I get out of it.
I get out of the car every time they make me get out of the car. Every time they search me. That's to me that I just thought that was
stop. So search you like up against the car, pat you down, search you.
Yeah. Make sure you don't have any weapons on you. What's that?
So for a speeding ticket,
yeah.
Were you in the Lundy limo?
We were in a Suburban.
Okay.
With 4 kids in the back, my mother-in-law, my wife, right? Like just on the, and so that's the type of thing. The reason that I bring that up is, it made me really angry when I saw the George Floyd thing. Man, I don't like being angry. I don't like having those emotions, but I do have experiences that have compounded over time, right? Little this, little that, little this, little that compounds. It's just like do you want a penny doubled every day or do you want $1 million, right? You get the penny doubled every day. Ultimately, you hit this compound interest point and it spikes. And that's where we're at. And so I've had little thing. Then you see something like this and it's like, shit, like, come on, man, this is ridiculous. A 10-minute long video, the man begging to freaking breathe. It's
and 3 cops watching it happen.
Disgusting. And so I was angry, and I don't like being angry. And my friend Danelle Delgado, she once told me, like, the only way out of a place like that is to give. That's the only way out, is to serve someone else. And so we had some money that the Rise and Grind members had put together, and we were looking for an opportunity to use it. And so we decided we'd go down to the Lexington Police Department because, again, I am very I'm an empath. So not only was I angry for people of color, but I was also like worried about these boys in blue, the 98% of them that are good humans, that are brothers and fathers and sons and daughters. And I was worried about, because I knew what they were facing out there in their shifts. And I knew their wives were worried. I knew their kids were concerned. And so I just thought, how can we kill 2 birds with 1 stone? So we went to Chick-fil-A, God's food, right? God's chicken. We went and got some of God's chicken, and we served all the police officers in Lexington. We bought their lunch just as a gesture of like, hey, I know you're having a rough day. I'm having a rough day too. So I love
seeing that. What did they say? Like when you walked in there with all that food, how did they feel?
Well, it was a little bit of a debacle, to be honest with you. The officers were all out in the field, and we were trying to figure out, where to drop the food. And this one guy was calling, and he goes, "Man, I never realized how hard it was to get a hold of the police." They were just busy, and they were dealing with a lot of stuff in the inner city. And so we dropped it off. But the people that were there were just, you could see the stress on their faces. You could see, the sweat on their brows, and the phones were ringing like crazy. And so for a moment, they were just very appreciative and grateful to have a moment of somewhat normalcy. I mean, you've got to look at everything, right? You want to talk about a perfect storm? I've got a perfect storm for you. Let's have a virus that shuts down everything and scares the hell out of everybody. And then let's put a mask on everybody. So now that people can't see who they are, then they can release their emotions without any ramifications. And then let's have a 10-minute video of a black man being kneed to death by a police officer. I mean, golly, dude, it's no surprise that the whole country's erupted. There's no surprise whatsoever. People have been pent up. They haven't, freedoms have been restricted. And now, I mean, think about a keyboard warrior. Think about a keyboard warrior, right? People behind the internet, they'll say anything, right? They'll troll you. They'll talk trash.
Yeah,
but when it comes to face, most people won't act the same way. Well, we've removed the faces. We put masks over everybody, which really destroys humanity. So now you've got SUVs driving into crowds because it doesn't look like a crowd of people. It looks like a crowd of criminals, right? Yeah. And you've got people doing criminal acts, acting as something that they're not. I think 90% of what you see out there is not the character of the people that are doing those actions. It's their emotions being released in what they feel is a safe way to release them.
So, Kerri, how do you feel when people say to you, "Oh, but all lives matter"?
Oh, wow. Okay, let me just take a breath. So, here's my answer to that. And yes, all lives matter. It's one of those things that I don't like. Some things don't even need to be said. Of course, every life is important. The point is that all lives matter, but right now, or this country has always struggled with race relations. And the reality is that if my child statistically was kidnapped, they would be less likely to be featured on the news and media. They would not be on the milk carton as much as a white child. That is a statistical fact, right? There are biases that make us care sometimes more about our own bubble or our own neighborhood than someone who's different. And so saying all lives matter is true, but right now there is an issue with us caring about Black victims. I just have to say that, right? There has been an issue in this country. And so saying all lives matters, I like this analogy. My house is on fire right now. And what you tell me is that all houses matter. Yes, all houses matter, but my house is on fire right now. And so I think while I'm not out there marching with the Black Lives Movement, I understand where they're coming from. They're saying, look, right now we have a fire. It's not the time to point out that everybody's lives matter. Let's focus on the problem right now. So yes, all lives matters, but Black lives matter too. And until all of our lives really matter the same way, then there is a point to Black lives.
I like your analogy. I think you summed it up beautifully in the fact that the house is on fire. Okay. Right? The house is on fire, and this is what's going on today. And because of what's going on, the brutality and some of those things, that house is on fire, and that's what we need to discuss now. Otherwise, we end up diluting the message because we can't, we need to hit things one thing at a time. And right now, this is the forefront. I read today, I think I heard it today, the church across the street from the White House was burned down. Every president since Madison has worshiped there. It's terrible. And again, that's why I want to have this conversation. And that's why I stuck my toe in it, because I've never been oppressed. I've never been pulled over and searched. My husband's never been pulled over and searched. Right. And, I can't imagine. That's why I'm like, what? Speeding ticket? You get pulled over, searching for your car, your mother-in-law, and and Glenn, let's be real. Your wife's white and so's your mother-in-law. Mm-hmm. So, but he saw you and all of a sudden, and, one of my favorite stories about Glenn Lundy is that he literally grew up in two different worlds. 2 doors down in the same apartment complex. And I feel like I know this story better than anybody, but besides Glenn. But you grew up 2 doors down, and you said that when you would be with your father, who was African-American, you lived this one life, and you laughed like, I ate fried chicken, this, and this. And then when you were at your mom's house, 2 doors down, literally, you were listening to country music. And so how do you identify with all of this? Because your mom is white, your dad is Black, you've lived 2 doors down.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I know. I don't know where to go with this, but it's like
I feel like you're on a balancing. You're on a like a tightrope balancing.
Yeah.
Back when I was younger, I felt torn. Now I feel like I'm a bridge. I feel like I'm really a bridge, and I have an opportunity. God gave me a gift. I did. I grew up to completely different cultures, and every stereotype you could possibly imagine existed in those cultures. Dad's house was a Black house. That was it. Gospel music, fried chicken, collard greens.
Love it.
Yeah, that was Dad's house, and Mom's house was a little rock and roll, a little country music, and Mama sitting on the couch reading a book, right? Like, it was just every stereotype that you could possibly think of. And so, right now I can feel, and that's probably the most frustrating part for me, is I've been given that gift, but I understand that other people haven't. And people, until you've walked in their shoes, it's just really hard to see through their eyeballs, right? It's just really, really hard. And so I'm banging my head against the wall. I was really frustrated. Skip Bayless on K-Love this morning, the Skip and Amy show, Positive, encouraging K-Love, right? If you ever listen to that radio station, Christian music, and it's always positive, encouraging. And Skip Bayless came on this morning at 6 a.m. and he said, Amy, I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't feel like being here today. He said, I know prayer works. I've seen miracles. I know God has a plan for all of this. He said, but dang, man, like I'm losing hope right now.
Is he black or white? Is he black?
He's white. He's
white.
white.
Okay.
But he was just like, I'm just losing hope for people right now. And this is the guy that leads K-Love, like leads the charge of a faith-based radio station. And I could feel what he was feeling. That's why I decided, this morning I did my Rise and Grind show and I wasn't going to say nothing. And then I'm like, dude, I just got to go live and I got to talk. And then you were like, let's talk. And we're doing something on Wednesday where we'll talk, because it's very disheartening, because I'm afraid, Lisa, I am afraid that until people walk in other people's shoes or figure out a way to step out of self. See, everybody right now is in self, right? You say that guy's a bad cop that killed George Floyd, and somebody immediately says, well, not all cops are bad. And you're like, well, I didn't say all cops were bad. That's not what I said at all. What I said is that guy in that uniform is a bad dude. He's a bad dude, and he did a bad thing.
The other three that sat and watched him do it.
And they're bad dudes.
Yes.
And there's other bad dudes out there, and that's what we need to be talking about. But people are instantly going to their stances and their beliefs, and they feel like they have to protect what's near and dear to them, and they can't take 2 seconds to step outside of that and just see, like, that dude's a bad dude. And there's a lot of bad things that continue to happen. There are economic differences in our society. There are cultural differences. There are hundreds of years of differences. And so I want you to walk with me and let's talk. Open your ears, close your mouth for a second, and just walk with me. And if we could get people to do that, but I don't know if people will do that, and that's my frustration point. Is I feel like here I am, I get to be a bridge and I can see everybody's side, but other people can't. And that scares me.
Well, it takes self-reflection, and that's very challenging. And I think, most people aren't racist, but everybody has biases, right?
Right.
And some of our biases negatively impact others more than some, right? So one of the things I think is challenging, and I see this really, really clearly in that I was raised, actually Lisa and I were born and raised in the same place, San Jose, California, very diverse community, grew up with almost every single race,
absolutely,
every culture, religion, all of that. And so I grew up in this place where I didn't realize how bad racism was until I left San Jose, until I went to Southern California and other parts of the country, because I had lived in this very diverse bubble. But with that, knowing people of other races in a very deep way gives you a perspective that your stereotypes are busted, because Julie, right, who's from Thailand, or this person who's a Muslim, and it's like knowing you don't believe and you don't buy into the stereotypes. But if you've lived like the majority of people where you're only around your own, think about your 10 closest friends right now. Think about the 10 people that you interact with the most. Write down their race, write down their gender, their religion. I guarantee the majority of people that do that exercise will see that they are surrounded on a deep level around the same kind of people. And so that makes it challenging, because when these kind of situations happen, even from a cop standpoint, when you're interacting with someone that you're not familiar with, all those stereotypes or the media or whatever's fed you is what kind of kicks in. And so I think awareness of your biases and just admitting that, look, we all kind of have them, to me is like a first step to end this.
Mm.
And it is, and Kerri, you and I have talked about that a lot. It's unconscious bias, right? It's like you don't even realize, because of because of your circumstances, or, your group of your 10 closest. And I'd even narrow that to 5 closest friends.
Yeah.
I'll be real. Like my 5 closest, 1 is Black and 4 are white.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why. That there's just how it is, right? It's just who we know, right? And then so what is the answer? What are you guys teaching your kids? I'm going to ask this: what are you saying to your kids right now? Kerri, Glenn.
Who wants to take this first? Glenn, do you want to take it first or me?
I mean, it depends.
I'll take it.
Depends on how long you want to wait. I got a lot of kids.
I know you do.
Let me go. I only have 2, so this will be about a third of the time that Glenn will take.
Yeah.
So let me just. I feel like I'm on my soapbox on so many things right now, but I have a lot of passion for this. So first of all, I just want to put the word out there that you should be talking to your kids about race. And I say that because, like I said, I have a lot of Black friends and white friends. And I will tell you, for my Black friends, we talk about race all the time. It's kind of a necessary thing. One, if you have a Black son, you got to have those discussions, right? Like he is looked at differently.
Discussion. Help us. Let us hear that. What is the discussion for your Black son?
Well, I would tell you my brothers, just the way my dad talked to them about being pulled over by the cops, right? And like how to react to those situations. We were raised in California, but my parents were from the South. So when we would visit the South, it's a little different than California on race relations. So they would kind of prepare us for the differences, right? And so I think those kind of discussions, my kids, my girls, is different. They're very different relative to the rest of their school. So I just need to make sure that they feel confident in themselves, wearing afros, being different, drawing attention, not because of who they are, but because of like being Black, being confident in like liking certain things culturally that might be different than the rest. So I don't want to let the media or the outside world help my kids feel confident about who they are. And when you're the only one, it can be challenging, right? You're different than everybody else. And so from a race standpoint, I just solidify that. And I also want them to know that they can be whatever they want to be. They don't have to be the stereotypical Black person, like, good athlete, good dancer, good, like these stereotypical things that, are encouraged, that they could be a scientist and they could be an astronaut. They could be whatever they want. And I have to be very deliberate about that, because if I'm not, then the media and TV and all of those things will fill their brains. They'll become influenced.
So Kerri, like one thing I think about with you, like last summer, like you had your hair like in the cutest, like you were going to the Caribbean and in braids, and you look, we're like all of us like, oh my God, you look amazing. And you're like, yeah, but I have to take it out to go to work.
Yep. And that's nothing against my company. No one told me that.
No. You felt like that was not, and we're like, why? It's so cute.
Because, and maybe Glenn, I don't know if you face this, but that is the balancing both worlds. I'm a Black woman in a white male industry, and how I've succeeded, I think, partially is kind of blending in and moving in and squeaking through those cracks, and being true to who I am. So I'm very proud of my culture and everything, but I pick my battles. And for me, wearing braids every day was not a passion of mine. I wanted to do it on vacation, but it wasn't a sword I was going to die on.
Probably gave you a little bit of too, but you look good.
But you know what I'm saying? So I think it's like, you need to be true to who you are. And if you love wearing braids and you love wearing your hair in afro, absolutely do it. For me, it wasn't worth it, in that I do think that people judge you. I think people judge you. And for me, I just, that wasn't a sword I was willing to die on. But hearing you say that kind of wants to make, I want to go get braids next week now.
Bobby Heron's on here. She goes, I remember that photo. It was stunning. We were all like, girl, you need to be wearing those bright, like what's interesting to me when you told me that, I was like, well, I was shocked. I'm like, I don't think they're I mean, you look great. It's cool. It's fun. It'd be no different than me doing something like that. But just that feeling, right, of trying to fit in. And so I wonder, and I see the pictures of your daughter with her afro. It's so cute. It's so back in style, right?
Yeah.
But
this generation's more confident in themselves too. I gotta say, my kids are like, I feel like they're more confident in who they are, and being true to who they are. So I think for me, like, just to be clear, I am very proud of my culture, but I think we do have to pick our battles, right? So, for me, for example, I don't love tattoos. So I don't get tattoos. It's not worth it for me. But if I did, I guess I would.
I don't even think battles is the right word. Like,
but it's interesting. She keeps saying that.
I keep on saying it because I think it is.
Right?
Business is a game, right? Business is a game, and we all play the game to win. Lisa Copeland dresses a certain way when she's about to go on stage and freaking deliver a badass presentation to a bunch of freaking white dudes in the car business. She dresses different, than when she's maybe just hanging out with her family on the weekends. Like, we do that. I suit up. When I go into a store, dude, I freaking suit up. I'm pressed. I'm clean, especially if I'm going to see Brian Benstock. I got the freaking tightest suit on, right? Like, that's just the game, right? You want to come off as the most professional human being that you can possibly be. And I learned early, when I was in the car business, I was 20 years old. I was still selling cars. I worked a deal over the phone with a guy on we were sitting there on a brand new Subaru Impreza WRX STI. And I worked the entire deal with him over the phone. He came in to pick up his car. When he pulled up, I said, how you doing, sir? I knew he was coming. So I said, how you doing, sir? Welcome to, Planet Nissan. And he said, yeah, I'm looking for Glenn Lundy. I said, I'm Glenn Lundy. And he looked me head to toe and said, you're Glenn Lundy? And I said, yep. And he got back in his car and drove off.
Are you serious?
Completely done deal. He was just there to pick up his car. We did everything over the phone. The whole time over the phone, I guess he thought I was a white guy, I guess is what he thought. But something offended him the moment he laid eyes on me. We never heard from him again. So I learned at 20 years old, like, I don't know who thinks what. All I know is I'm going to dress to impress. And I'm going to deliver, and I'm going to study, and I'm going to be intelligent. I'm going to speak well. I'm going to do all of the things so that I can win this game of business and ultimately this game of life. To go back to the other question, as far as the kids, two things I do. First of all, people think some people think I'm crazy or, Amish or whatever, but like, my kids are not on the internet and never have been and won't be for a really long time. They watch Netflix and that's about it. And so maybe they're behind on technology. They don't have cell phones. Because I'm not ready to expose them to Pandora's box. Now, as far as talking about the color of their skin, and they know daddy's skin is brown and their skin looks different and their eyes look different. And, so we talk about the beauty, but really that's it. We just talk about the beauty in being blended. We talk about the beauty in differences and cultural differences. We study cultural differences and we talk about all of that stuff. So we study the beauty of it. I haven't introduced them to the dark side of it.
Okay, but when are you going to do that? Because at some point they come out of that bubble and it's alive and well.
Well, that's what Glenn. That's what I was going to say. Is I think the challenge too is that I want my kids to understand their history. My great grandfather was a slave. My grandmother went through Jim Crow. My parents went through civil rights. Like, I need them to understand that. And it's not always taught in the schools anymore.
Sure.
So by covering that, even simply covering their ancestry project, my daughter, when she was like 6 years old, we did the ancestry project. They asked, one of the questions, where did your ancestors come from? I said, they came from Africa to America. My daughter said, oh, did they come to America for new opportunity? All right. So not quite, right? Like, you end up having those discussions just simply by covering history in an age appropriate way, right? Like, I didn't cover slavery in its like raw sense, but like, I didn't want to lie to her either and tell her that, no, we came here for new opportunity. It was like, it's you know what I'm saying? So I think it ends up naturally happening because I want them to truly understand where their people came from.
Yeah, no doubt. And I guess I just think I'm hoping, so my daughter's 10, I'm hoping if we can plant enough seeds of beauty that when they see the darkness, their inherent core response will be that it's beautiful, not that it's not.
What did your kids think when you were in the Suburban and daddy gets pulled over? Like, dad is dad, and you get pulled over and you get searched, you got to leave the car and all of that. Like, what did you tell your kids then?
I told my kids that daddy broke the law.
Right. You're not going to give them the background on that. Yeah.
And this is what happens when you break the law. You know, that's it. You break the law, then the police will do something about it. And that's really the only lesson they needed to learn. You know, they're young at that point. You know,
that's true.
7 years old, 5 years old, 3 years old. And hopefully I can instill that in them, like have a healthy fear of the law, because your dad did not when he was young, and it sucks.
Yeah. So what do you guys feel about, and I've just been so, like, again, so careful when people say, your white friends, I know how you feel.
So I think it comes from a good place. And I try. I'm not always, you might get me on a bad day and I'm not as patient, but I try. And I think it comes from a good place, but I don't think that's the best response, right? Like to anybody who's going through anything, the very first response to make it about you, right? Like, I know what you're going through.
Right.
Someone going through keys, going through chemo. I know how you feel. Don't.
Right. It's like if for the women out there, it's like if a guy was like, if you were complaining about the challenges of being a woman, and the guy's like, I know what it's like, right? Like that would be crazy. You'd be like, really? You don't know what it's like, right? So I do think that that's not a good place to start. It's not a good place to bring up examples. You know, I've had a couple of that examples of people saying, well, white people are also, you know, brutalized by the police officers, or look at this example. No one cared about that, right?
Burning down right now, people. That's the best analogy ever, Kerri Wise. There's one house burning down. That's the conversation, right?
It's like, it feels tone deaf. It feels like you're coming at it to make it about you, or really it feels like you're discounting that it's real.
Yeah, and Kerri, our good friend Scotty Reese is on here right now, and she's come the same place I'm coming from. Like, finding the right language is so important and so difficult. Yeah. What is the right language for your friends, for your white friends? Let's just call it.
I think the perfect language is, to me, the perfect language is, hey, Glenn, I love you, I care about you, and I've got your back. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what you're feeling, but I just want you to know, like my buddy Isaiah Mills, he's 7'2", dude's a beast, right? Big old 7'2", redheaded white boy. He sent me a message yesterday morning. He said, I could never understand what you feel right now, but just know I will stand in front of your business if you need me to. And
Kentucky boy, right?
Yeah, you know, and that's really what we need. We just need to know that you have our back. We don't expect you to understand. Like, I don't expect you. You haven't walked in my shoes. So just knowing that you love me and that you care about me and you've got my back is enough.
Kerri?
Yeah, and I would say, so let me tell you what to avoid, and then I'll tell you what to do. So avoid I know how you feel. I
got her on here.
I think you have to be careful. You know, I think there are people that are well-meaning that are kind of that have told me how I should react, right? Like, you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that, or you should. And I think that's part of that lends to frustration a little bit, because when you're angry, you're doing your best to contain your anger. And there's been all kinds of protests, right? People kneeling, athletes speaking out, that have all been criticized. And so there's just this feeling of like, what do you guys want us to do? How should we react? And so there's a frustration there that, like, nothing is good enough. I've seen posts about Martin Luther King, which I really appreciate, and I admire him. But even, saying that you should be like Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was shot in the head for his peaceful march. So even that is a level of frustration to say, man, he tried peace and he was still didn't end well. And so I think when you're prescribing, just remember, like, that's part of the frustrations. It feels like nothing is working. And so someone lashes back at you. That's where it's coming from. I think Glenn is right. Treat me like a person. I'm Kerri. I'm the person, and just reach out to me like you would like any other situation where I'm struggling. That, look, I'm thinking of you. I'm empathizing for you. I'm praying for you. Some friends, I mean, I'll tell you, Brian Benstock, I don't want to call him out, but like, he said the most profound thing I've ever seen on my page, which he said, like, I didn't realize this was happening.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what privilege was, right? He said, I didn't understand what that was. So like, that's even taking it a step further. When someone says, like, I didn't know, I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was this bad for you. Like, to me, that's even like the highest level of empathy. So just those words are so important, and just don't overdo it, right? Don't overdo it. Just reach out, see how you're doing, and see how they're doing. And I think that's good enough. That's a good start.
Yeah.
Glenn?
I was just saying, Brian sent me messages too, through this, and it was really powerful and impactful. I guess, on another note, like, I can't help but go back to, flip the switch and try to step in the shoes, man. Like, imagine, let's flip the switch on this video real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take 3 black guys or 4 black guys, put them in a circle, and drop one black guy's knee in the neck of a. Oh, see, look, Kerri's already.
I know where you're going.
Drop his knee in the neck of a white man that's laying there on the ground begging if he could breathe, begging for breath, a father, a son, and just imagine the outrage. Imagine what that would look like. And I think no matter what biases or how you were raised or whatever, I think unless you lived under a rock, I think that we would all agree that if that were the case, those 4 black men would have been in jail before the end of that video.
I agree with you. You're right. That's exactly what would have happened.
And that kind of shows the difference between, when people talk about white privilege or anything like that. It's not about growing up with a bunch of money, growing up rich, it's just, there is a different tone in America depending on the color of your skin. And we have to continue to talk about it and have conversations if we ever want to grow and get past that. And but we have to admit that it's there first. I think that's where it starts, is, and that's what I loved about Brian's message, is Brian was like, shit, I didn't even know, man. Like,
You didn't know.
I
was talking to Kerri earlier, and I said, well, I finally learned what white privilege means by somebody's post. The fact that we're a country, I thought, yes, I'm white, but like, I get it. I'm in good shape. I'm not like, I'll own that. But what I didn't understand, when people would keep saying it, but the fact that our country was built by white men, the laws were created by white men for white men, and I'm saying white men because that's what it was back then. And and that's it. And so everybody's been having to dig out of a hole since then. I look at the 19th Amendment for women, where we had to go and we were beaten and we had to protest to have the right to vote. Okay, so that's nothing like trying to and not be chattel in 1919, and that's nothing compared to, let's say I am a woman and my skin is black, or I'm a man and my skin is black, and I'm still having to fight to get out of that hole. And so I don't remember who it was, but whoever it was, I was like, the 19th Amendment is something I've spoken on. I'm very passionate about, just 100 years ago, that women were chattel, but where I guess I just didn't put all the strings together. It's like my black friends are still feeling like I think the women did back in 1919, right? Where they can't protest and they're beat, right? And so it's just interesting, and not that I'm glad any of this happened by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think it makes people that are leaders, myself and Brian Benstock and some of us, go, huh, okay, right? So
yeah. Well, and I think that's what it comes down to, is just being heard, because a lot of these instances they're not on video, and so it's challenging when it's not on video. It's challenging when it's not like overt racism, right? Like, most racism isn't someone just like calling you a name, right? It's the stuff that happened in Central Park, right? The woman that felt like she could call the cops and say, I'm being attacked by a Black man. She knew exactly what she was doing in that conversation.
Because she was mad at it. She was just trying to get even.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do I get even? Mm-hmm. And so my friend posted something that was like the best description. She says, white privilege doesn't mean your life hasn't been hard. It means your skin tone isn't one of the things that makes it hard.
Yeah.
There's plenty of other privileges. Yeah. There's social economic. There's being a man. If you're a man, you have privilege, right? If you're heterosexual, you have privilege. So we all have certain privileges. It's just, if you happen to have that, that's one of them.
So like how you if you almost like set up, okay, the different privileges in a category. Some people, I got 3, you got 4, you got 1, you got 2, right? I mean, that's kind of a way, because I mean, you said it, man, woman, Black,
socioeconomic,
right? Education, Christian, right? Yeah.
There's all kinds, and I always say, like, my parents were born very poor in the South, but I was born in San Jose, California. I am absolutely privileged.
Right.
African American. I am privileged, right? To be born in that place at the income level of that city. And so I have no problem saying that. But what I find is people get really defensive saying they have privilege. Like, it's almost like you're saying that they feel like you're saying they haven't worked hard or whatever. And it's not that. But I do think it's a crime to not use your privilege to speak on behalf of those who don't have it. I think it's my duty to use my voice, to use my education, to speak, my influence to speak up for those who don't have that same privilege, that same voice, all of that. So I'm getting off my soapbox. But.
No, it's good though. It's good. And so wrapping up, what is it? How do we use our influence for change, right? We all 3 fundamentally agree, rioting and looting, like, that's not the way to do it. It's wrong. It's wrong at every level, but it's not wrong for a sect of people, whether it was the women out marching in 1919 for the right to vote, because that's the only way they were going to have it done, and beaten and jailed to do it, or African Americans out marching peacefully and saying, we're not going to take this anymore. We're coming together. We are one, and you're going to hear us. Finally, you're going to hear us, right? So how do we use our influence for good?
Well, we gotta come together and have conversations like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about the conversations. Like, there's so much. We create and we perpetuate division, right? Because that's like Kerri was saying. If you look at the 10 people around you, that's like a human thing. We're drawn to people that are like that are like us,
mm-hmm.
And so we gather and we have all these different groups and sects and so on and so forth, right? You've got the Black Lives Matters groups, and then you got police that are a group, and you just have all these different groups, the White Women's Christian Society of America group, whatever, right? There's all these.
Fred, I do not belong to that group, in case you're wondering.
So you have all of these groups, and these groups they're not having conversations with each other. They're having conversations with themselves. And you can't learn anything when you're just in a group of a lot of other people that are exactly like you. So as leaders, we have to create environments where people can come together of all different ethnicities and socio-economical backgrounds and upbringings, and actually have real life conversations, not just surface level, but have real deep, in-depth conversations and agree right out the gate that, hey, you're not right and I'm not wrong, and I'm not right and you're not wrong. This is through my eyeballs, and I want to see through yours.
I think that conversations are really important. The challenge with having conversations, especially with people who are different than you, is that a lot of times it helps to have relationships. So, I don't want everyone to go and reach out to that like one Black person they know and start asking them a bunch of questions, or that may not go very well.
Real quick, sir, come here. I just want to ask.
I can see it now, right? Everyone's like, Kerri told me to reach out, and like, it may not go well. They might be closed. They might get easily offended because you know why? Because you don't have a relationship.
Kerri, see, you can say all this. This is Black privilege right now.
Lisa, there's someone watching this that's going to make a phone call to that one person they talked to like 5 years ago, right? Asking all these questions. So that's going to go really badly.
I don't even know.
Yes, tell me how you feel.
How you feel now?
We'll just create a hotline, Kerri. It's like 1-800 call a Black person.
Exactly. And if you do want to talk to a Black person, call me. I'm a safe person. I think I'll have a lot of empathy to your stupid questions. But that being said, no, I think I challenge everyone to put themselves out there in groups of people that are uncomfortable. Like, I challenge you over the next 3 months to make yourself a minority just for a day. Go somewhere where you might be the only one. I don't care if you're a guy and you go to a woman's conference, or maybe there's a festival, African American festival, and you attend. And by the way, we're in coronavirus world, so there's probably not a lot of festivals.
Kill everybody off.
But I just think like exposing yourself as much as possible to people that are different and trying to build relationship, not just on your race, but things that you might have in common, is a good start. I think in automotive, women in automotive, that has been a lot of reason why a lot of women that I know of different cultures in automotive have come together. So find that place where you can start building relationships, because if you can get real relationships, then we can start having real conversations. Until that happens, we're just going to have that. We're going to have that divide. So work on the relationships. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. What do we do right now, guys? I mean, I was telling Kerri earlier, they were looting my mall, 3 miles up the road from me. I-35 in Austin, Texas, shut down for 2 days. Rioters and graffiti. So, I mean, it's right here it's right by my house, all over the country. How do we not, and I'm not happy about it, but I'm not mad at my Black friends. I'm just mad at the whole thing that the guys in the guys in Minneapolis, the mayor, they didn't handle this. If they would have handled this the way they should have and put all 4 of those criminal cops in jail for murdering that man, I don't know that any of this would have gone to this level, because I think that's part, and tell me if I'm wrong. To me, yes, George was murdered. That's terrible in itself. But to me, I think, and if I'm right or wrong, more of the conversation is the 4 men that murdered him, and 1 that did it and 3 that watched it. So I find them just as guilty and let it go on, and were not brought to justice. I think that has caused more of this than the actual crime. Not that I'm saying that the crime is forgivable at any level. Am I right or am I wrong?
Can I just jump in here, though? Because George Floyd, bless his life, is not what this is all about.
Right.
I mean, that was one instance. I can name a lot of different instances. Like I said, there's been other high profile instances.
Right.
But there's also just people's personal experiences, right? And so while I think that the George Floyd situation got a lot of attention because it was so heinous and it was on video, and we have social media now, everything spreads. you got to remember that people that are angry aren't angry for this one situation. They're angry for the situation they tried to tell you happened and you didn't believe them because there was no video or there was not enough evidence or right. And so I think that's where the frustration comes. I got to tell you the Ahmaud Arbery case. I was frustrated because the first thing that we did was start to look up the kid's background and why he deserved to be shot. Oh, he committed a crime. He did this, you know. And so I think I just want to be clear that this incident is why we're talking right now. But the reality is a lot of this has been going on, not just in my generation, my parents' generation, like it's just all building up.
Right. And this is the culmination now.
Yes.
Of all of that frustration.
So just if you seem surprised, just know a lot of people aren't necessarily surprised if they've experienced it themselves, especially. So I don't know. I don't want to end on a bad note, but I think like these conversations are so important. And I'm seeing all the comments that are up there. Like it's so nice to see us have this conversation and not be calling each other names or labeling each other.
And here's the deal, everyone who's watching who doesn't know us. Me, Glenn, and Kerri have been very good friends for a very long time. And we had something happen last week and I had to reach out to Kerri and we had a conversation.
Yes.
And but because we're friends, and it had nothing to do with me and her, it was an outside situation, but she and I needed to have a conversation about it. And it was safe because we were friends. I didn't think, oh, this is Kerri, my Black friend. I got it. It was like, no, this is Kerri, my friend. And we need to talk about something. And just like I would do with Glenn. And so that's why I wanted to have this honest conversation with friends. And I think that is more, but I wanted to share it with everybody out there because the three of us we have lots of conversations between us and we're all friends, but to share that conversation, to see the perspective, because Kerri and I have laughed so many times about, I'm an angry Black woman, I'm an angry white woman. Like, to us, that's funny. And it's our shtick with each other.
Yes.
But in the real world, it's a thing. And I remember the first time you and I talked about it, Kerri, I go, is that really a thing? With angry Black women? She's like, you are so stupid. I'm like, stupid. Like, it's really a thing? Like, I really didn't know. I mean, I don't look at Black women and think they're any angrier than me because I'm always one fighting for equality. So I'm thinking, you're not any angrier than I am, sister.
Well, yeah, no. And I think just to give everybody the context of that, what I say to Lisa is if I assert myself, right, I have to be very thoughtful about stereotypes that are out there like that one. Right. And so, you could see two people react in the same way, or maybe I do kind of show a little emotion, and depending on your stereotype of them or your experience with them, you might perceive it differently, negatively, positively. So it's always in the back of my mind, people's lack of exposure or their stereotypes and me not necessarily feeding into them, which gets a little exhausting, I must say.
But it helps if you've got Black girlfriends, if you're the white girl, and you can have those conversations. They can slap you upside the head and go, you're so dumb. Like, right? And so to your point, trying to expand your circle of people, not disingenuously, but just genuinely going, not everyone's going to look like me, believe like I believe, see life as I see it. That's what makes life to me. That's what makes the best wine-driven conversations with my friends.
Yes.
Or my friends that are different. The ones that sit and agree with me, well, they're boring. Next. Right.
Yeah, and we have a lot in common, right? I mean, there's things that you could do. Join a volleyball league. Join a line dancing group. I mean, there's karaoke. I mean, there's things that across different races that we have in common. And so I think find those commonalities, but more importantly, be prepared to be uncomfortable. I'm usually the only one in a room at most of my life, right? Like I walk in a room.
You and I are together.
Unless we're together, and we're like
somewhere together.
Right? But I got to tell you, most people are not comfortable being the only one in a room. Trust me when I say that.
Okay, but knowing you too, you're just as like, so I mean, do you really feel uncomfortable? Because I mean, I'm with you guys so much. I have been for years around the country, and you typically are. You're right. You know what? I don't even notice it because it's y'all. So it's like I just don't
notice it.
I notice it, but I embrace it, and it comes down to that word privilege again. Like I am thankful that I have an opportunity to create the life that I'm able to create for my family. I'm thankful that I can walk into a room filled with a bunch of white people and I can still command an audience. I can still add value. I'm thankful for, all of those things. And, I want to leave on this one final note, and I better get off of here. There's going to be a white on black crime if I don't get home soon, because my wife is expecting me. So she's gonna get me if I don't get out of here. But you had asked, with the things going on right now, with the looting and the so on and so forth, and the only thing I can plead with people is just please don't judge. Just don't, like, you don't know what is going on. We don't know if that person's real or a plant, like if they're fake. We don't know if it's somebody from Antifa. We don't know if it's some of those people homeless, or that are looting. They might be homeless. They might not have eaten for the last 3 days.
Right.
They're completely impoverished, and they see an open. You don't eat for 3 days, and then go see the glass door out of a Subway. I guarantee you're going to climb in there. You're going to get you a sandwich, right? We don't know. You just don't know. So try to put down the binoculars of judgment where we're trying to point blame in all the different places where it doesn't need to belong. And instead, let's focus on the reality that there are injustices and civil liberties that are being stripped from people and have been for a really long time. And we need to do something about it.
Yeah, Patricia, I saw her comment. She said, seek first to understand. Right. And I think that's a really, really strong statement. And I agree with you that, we're not making excuses for those who are committing crimes, but I would say be careful about looping that all into the cause. Right. I'm hearing people say, well, they are rioting, they are criminals, as if they is like the entire movement.
The whole movement.
Right. And there's a big difference between people who are protesting,
right,
versus those who are, robbing businesses and setting things on fire. And so let's just be careful to separate those. But more importantly, like I said, I hope we have the same outrage for racial injustice as we do for the looters. Right. I hope when you're like posting, you're putting your fourth post on there about these evil looters, that you also have a fourth post on there about the fact that, I'm not going to stand by and watch this happen to our great country that was not built on one person being more important than the other. It was built on us all being equal.
All men created equal.
All men created equal. And women.
All men created equal, but okay, we'll leave it at that.
And women. Man privilege.
Man privilege. You guys back there, the future is female. It's always there. All right, well, my dear friends, thank you for coming on and just having this very frank and honest conversation. And those of you who are watching, I would recommend you do the same thing, with your friends in your circle. Now, just don't start calling up every Black person and just say, like, you're on Facebook with me, right? Because that isn't genuine. But do you have friends out there that you need to genuinely have a conversation with? And
I will offer my services for one day. I will be your Black friend. If you have a question, feel free to reach out to me.
She picks up the bar tab a lot. So Kerri's a good one to have.
Yeah, she's a better friend than I am, because I don't.
He has all those kids.
It's not near as much fun ever since he quit drinking. That was the day I quit trusting him.
All that water.
All that
a little lemon in to give it flavor.
I've tried so many times to corrupt him. It's not even funny. All right, my friends. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for doing this. This was so important. I really appreciate you putting
And I
this
just
on.
hope all of you out there continue this conversation, and we just all try to be better humans for it. I love you too.
I love you too.
All right, and we'll talk soon.
All right.
Bye. Oh.